All right, you guys, we're going to go ahead and do a Unit 8 review. We're going to do things a little differently. I'm just going to have my phone. I'm looking at the screen right now, so we can kind of use that as our guide. So here's some keywords for you. And I would make sure that you can look through these and you feel very, very comfortable about what each of them are and what they do. So if we just go right here to cerebrum, cerebellum, brainstem. This is all anatomy of the brain. We can kind of skip to this picture real quick. So here's the cerebrum. There's the cerebellum. There's the brainstem. We definitely need to know what each of them do. So just knowing the cerebrum does everything from our higher level thinking to our sensations to short-term memory, vision, the limbic systems and their emotions. So, I mean, you can see all these different things of everything that it does. Okay. Then we get to our cerebellum. That's all about balance and coordination. And then the brainstem, it's our life support. It is our respiration rate. It is our heart rate. So it is like the highway system connecting our body and all the information that the peripheral nerves pick up and sense and take back to the brain for processing. It travels through that brainstem. So knowing these three is a big deal. And then the cerebrum is broken up into 4 parts. And understand what these 4 parts are. So that frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe. And knowing that you have 2 of each. You have the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. So there's the 2 frontal lobes. And just understanding what each of these do. I had you write this down on your own piece of paper. And then I had it in bold yellow what was most important part. So your frontal lobe is all about personality, higher level thinking. You get to your parietal lobe, it's your integration of your senses. Okay, touch and pressure is the biggest things. And of course your occipital lobe is about vision. And then your temporal lobe is hearing, auditory, and then your short-term memory. And then like we said before, your brainstem, that highway connection center. All right. Now these next 3 are also related to the brain, but they are your meninges. They are the tissues that surround your brain. And your dura mater, okay, it is the outer layer of the brain. Okay, and it is the toughest tissue. Okay, it's thick. You can almost, pull on it, and it's not easy to tear. So that's your dura mater. And then the middle layer is the arachnoid layer. And I remember arachnoid, it's like this, it's a spider that fills the gaps between these 2 layers. Okay, then the innermost layer, the deepest layer, okay, that's your pia mater, that's your delicate mater, and that's one that goes in the cracks and crevices of the brain. So something to understand is when we have bleeding on the brain, it's going to put pressure, and that could therefore permanently damage the different sections of the brain. So you need to understand the difference between a hemorrhage and a hematoma. Okay? The biggest thing about a hemorrhage is a blood vessel that's ruptured open and it's bleeding out of the blood vessel. And then a hematoma is simply just a pooling of the blood. So a hemorrhage causes hematomas. This is the rupture of the blood vessel, blood comes out, and the hematoma is where the pooling takes place of the blood. So now, if you have a subarachnoid hemorrhage, so kind of go back to this picture, a subarachnoid hemorrhage. So there's the arachnoid, sub means below, so it's between these 2 layers. Okay. If you have a subdural hematoma, okay, sub below the dura mater, so that's between the dura and the arachnoid. So it's just kind of get an idea of reference where things are. As you can see here, this would be a great question on the test. What effects would this hematoma have on the brain? So you got to think, all right, what section of the brain is it damaging? Looks like it's more just the cerebrum. And then you got to orient yourself. Okay, looks like here, as far as what lobes, Could maybe be some frontal lobe, looks like some temporal lobe, heck, maybe even some parietal lobe. So just get an idea, orient yourself where things are. Okay. All right. So I'm going to kind of go back to this vocab here for a second. So those are your meninges. Okay, we understand hemorrhaging is a rupturing. All right, psychometrics. That is the measurement of your psyche, the measurement of the psychology of your brain. Psychometrics is absolutely awesome. There definitely is there's pluses and minuses to it. It is not a perfect science. So when it comes to psychometrics, I'm going to get down here on the slide here. Okay, it is the measurement of two things, your personality and your intelligence. Okay, we have 2 different ways to test the personality and 3 different ways to test our intelligence. All right, so keep that in mind. 2 for personality, 3 for cognitive, 3 for intelligence. Let's just skip to what those are. So when it comes to your intelligence, the cognitive part, you have speed tests, power tests, and knowledge tests. All right, so speed is just how quickly you can process information, and it has set, like the answers are very narrow, so it's pretty clear what the answer would be. A power test, those are your difficult questions, higher level thinking, your short answers, your essay. And then knowledge is just, once again, narrow spectrum, how well do you know the information? Should not require a lot of thought process and not higher level thinking difficulty ones like the power test. So those are your 3 that they do for cognitive. And then when you get to your personality tests, there's 2 different personality tests, your objective test and a projective test. Okay, objective is what I had you guys take online. The objective test was where you have set responses and you choose what your reaction would be in certain situations. And then it gives you an idea at the end which personality you have a tendency to more lean towards. And there's lots of different types of personality tests as far as what the colors mean. The one I had you guys do was red, yellow, blue, and white. So that is a fun little activity to do and finish that assignment. All right, projective means it's not structured. Okay, it is really abstract. And let me just show you this Rorschach's ink blot test is a great example of a projective test. If we look at this picture, I've mentioned before that, I've got kids at home, so when I see this picture, I see Yogi Bear. There's the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and his face has been shoved in a pie. Other people might look at this and go, oh, okay, this looks like a Grim Reaper. There's an angel of death, another angel of death, a fireplace, there's a body cremating and melting. So 2 very different perspectives. So just understanding that a projective personality test, it is unstructured, it's ambiguous, and there's definitely going to be a rubric to help grade and categorize it. So what makes a psychometric test reliable? Okay, it is considered to be scientific measurement, and it's really because it follows 4 rules. All right, so there's 4 rules regarding psychometric testing. Okay, 1, it has to be objective. That means it's not biased, and every observer that would look at it would be able to, once again, create an identical account of what's going on. So it's not biased to one individual or group of people versus another. Okay? Systematic is that it has a way to be scored, graded. There's a rubric. There's a set way to assess it and understand it. Okay, standardized means that it is given in a prescribed way. Kind of like the ACT test. Set instructions, set amount of time. It's the exact same for everybody. And then finally, the assessment. That's the entire process of giving, analyzing, collecting, and using that information to make accurate predictions. So those are your 4 rules that govern a psychometric test. Okay. Now, there's definitely problems with psychometric testing, big time. When it comes to psychometric testing, there is a tendency for people to want to change their answers. Because one, they're either being judged and they don't want people to see how they really would want to react. And that means, that goes along with this impression management of individuals try to appear nice because they fear social disapproval. So that's huge. Now, the other example of social desirability is that you flat out are deceiving yourself. You are way too overly optimistic, and it gives you a scenario. What would happen if your brother punched you in the gut? And you would say, oh, I'd just walk away. I wouldn't care. But in reality, you probably would deck him in the face. So you are deceiving yourself, and impression management is you're trying to manage the impression others have on you. Mood is huge. When you're happy-go-lucky, calm, you're going to be in more of the sense to take your time, read the question, and not get discouraged easily, which could help you perform better on the test. Versus if you're really angry, upset, high anxiety, all those things could affect it. Your lifestyle, okay? So if a test is not relevant to an individual's lifestyle, the individual will not perform well at it. It just depends, once again, what type of test is it? And if it doesn't relate to what you're familiar with, you're not going to be as comfortable with it. Biases, ethnic groups, making sure that if you're a new immigrant, if your English is your second language, all those things could affect the results of the test. And therefore, it wouldn't be accurately assessing your knowledge or heck, even of your personality if you can't understand the words. All right, the last thing really has to do with the culture. Just the way a test is written and being able to understand how it's written. And so psychometric testing is usually written with a Western culture, which is nice because that fits us. All right, going back up, looking at our vocab, there's a lot there with psychometrics. Okay. All right, serial killer, mass murder, spree killer. You got to know the difference between the 3. A serial killer kills 3 or more with a cooling off period. Okay, a mass murderer kills 4 or more, and it's a single event. Okay, typically it's at one location. And then a spree killer kills 2 or more, and usually it's in separate locations. Okay. Now let's look at signature behaviors. All right. Now signature behaviors. First off, you got to understand that what a behavior is. And let me go to that part here real quick. Understand that a behavior, it's actually just an expression of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And you got to remember, past behaviors can help predict future behaviors. So this is where I had you think, was there a time that you got really upset? And have you been upset due to the same reasons? Maybe someone's chomping their food while you eat dinner and it annoys you. And every time you hear somebody chomp, you're instantly annoyed. That is a good example of how past behaviors can help predict future behaviors and how you would react. And so if we go to signature behaviors, let's kind of look through here a little bit. So once again, a behavior is an expression of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So if you have a signature behavior, that is an act that was committed that was not needed to commit the offense. If you're trying to kill somebody, you didn't have to stab them 100 times and then maybe chop off their head. So, I mean, that is a signature behavior. That is above and beyond. But why would they do that? Well, there is some psychological or emotional need they're trying to fill. Okay, and that is unique to them. All right. So understand signature behaviors is not needed to commit the offense, but it does feel really the main reason why they're doing it, the psychological and emotional need. All right. Let's just move into a calling card. This is unique to individuals as well. and it's often used once again to taunt the police. And this is where we had things like we said, Jack the Ripper would write notes to the police in victims' blood. Ooh, that's kind of wigging out a little bit, isn't it? Okay. These were all different examples of calling cards that killers had. All right. Okay. Looking here. Okay. When it comes to psychopathology, once again, this is the study of our psyche, how well you understand and interpret things. Okay, an antecedent, that is what plan did they have in place? What triggered them to start killing? What was their fantasies that led them to that point? All right, PET scans versus MRIs. Now, both are really important when it comes to analyzing somebody's brain. But this is a PET scan. It's all about the chemicals, the hormones found within somebody. Maybe their hormone levels, their dopamine, their serotonin are off. And those can cause things like depression. Those could cause things like social anxiety, isolation. And once again, all of those things can lead to criminal behaviors. So your PET scan is about your chemicals in your brain versus an MRI is an image, a detailed image. Okay. You do need to know what PET scan stands for. All right. Positron emission tomography, doing different images of different sections of the brain, where your MRI is magnetic resonance imaging, using little magnets to bounce and radiate back and forth to give you a detailed image. So if you have a tumor, you're going to look at it with an MRI. Where's the tumor at? How can you get it removed? If you're severely depressed, anxiety, you're going to want to do a PET scan. And let's look at those chemicals and hormones in your brain and how it's making your brain activate in different ways. All right. We get to a polygraph. You did have a chance to do a little lab on this. I hope that worked out and that was pretty fun for you. So a polygraph, you have to remember when it comes to polygraphs, their job is not to be a lie detector. Okay, their job is not to say, yep, this person's lying or not. A lie detector's job is simply to detect if there's any type of deception being displayed. Now, there's all sorts of different tests they do on a polygraph. Okay, poly stands for many, graph is different measurements. So there's lots of different measurements being recorded and analyzed on this individual. We kind of go look in here at this picture. Okay, so you got the pneumograph, and that goes right across the chest. The pneumograph is measuring the respiration rate. Bigger breaths means you're more calm. Short, shallow breaths means you are in a state of anxiety or nervousness, or, like we said, excited. Okay, you got your blood pressure. All right, what's happening to your heartbeat? Once again, usually when you're nervous, excited, it will beat at a faster pace. Here is your pulse, your heart rate. I love this one. This has to do with body movement. There's sensors in the chair, on the pad. Every time you shift, move, balance, weight, tick your foot, it records and analyzes. Okay, electrodermal sensors, that is when you're sweating. Once again, nervous or excited, you have a tendency to sweat. Okay, these are automatic physiological responses that occur in your brain, that react in your body that you cannot control. Now, there's some people you've heard that can beat a polygraph. To an extent, individuals are trained to calm themselves down in high-pressure situations, keep their respiration calm, keep their heart rate, blood pressure calm, less movement, body movements. Absolutely, there are people that are trained. I mean, you look at your military, your police officers, they are trained to handle high-pressure situations in a calm state. So the more practice you have, the better you are at it. But to look at all these different ways to measure physiological responses and think that somebody could pass every single one of those is really difficult. and not typically possible. All right, so how do you perform a polygraph? Okay, first off, an individual is going to be hooked up to all of the sensors. And then second of all, there's going to be a period where they are allowed to relax. You want their body to calm down and go back to normal as much as possible. Then they're going to ask them some baseline questions. And these are questions that they already know the answers to. Like, what's their name? What school do they attend? Are they married? Okay, then they'll also be asked during these baseline questions to lie. Reason is they want to know how does their body react when they are lying and they know they're lying. Because once again, even if you are told to lie versus if you lie on your own, your body will still react the same way to a degree. So these baseline questions are used as points of comparison. How does their body look when they are telling the truth? How does their body look when they are lying? After the baseline questions, then they're going to ask the real questions, the questions that are needed for the investigation to continue. Okay. And then I like when it says, at the end of the examination, the tester compares the traces from the real questions from the baseline questions. Okay, in theory, true responses and lies show up quite differently on a trace relative easily to spot. All right, so just understanding they use baseline questions to compare with the real investigative questions. Now, when I had you guys give the polygraph to your family members, I had you do baseline questions, real investigative questions, and return back to baseline questions. All right, let's go back and look here real quick. Okay. Yeah, I think we got this part all covered. So now let's just kind of go down to some of the big things regarding criminal psychology. Okay. What is an MO? All right, it's a learned behavior. It can change. It absolutely is continuously evolving. And I think the biggest thing here is these guys start off with a fantasy in mind. Then that fantasy evolves. And as they keep trying to reach that fantasy, it's impossible. So they keep reenacting and killing over and over, keep trying to perfect the fantasy that's in their head, knowing very well it keeps changing and evolving. Okay. So your MO is your modus operandi, your mode of operation. It's why they do what they do. It's their behaviors, it's their reasons, it's all combined into one. All right, so I want to talk about FBI's crime scene analysis. This is their 6 steps they use to analyze a crime scene. Okay, and then use that to apprehend an individual. So first, profiling input is all about collecting the evidence, everything you possibly could imagine at the crime scene. And then decision process models is making connections, arranging it to where you see patterns. Right? Where's their kill zone? What's the connection between victims? Crime assessment is when they reconstruct the crime scene, either through videos or making the crime scene or talking it through, but they're reconstructing it. Then criminal profile is combining those first 3 steps, the evidence, the patterns, the information they gain from the crime scene, and then putting out a profile, hopefully using this to catch the individual. Then off they go on that investigation, what that profile is. If it is a male, white Caucasian male between 20s and 30s, out for control, seeking women. So, I mean, it can give them an idea of what they're looking for. And then hopefully they can catch them. Okay, but knowing if there's no good leads in this investigation process, then they got to go back to step 1 and look back at the evidence and start over to create a new profile. All right, let's go down to a serial killer and the different types of serial killers. All right, when it comes to serial killers, there's lots of different categories. And you have a copycat killer. Copycat killers are interesting because they are feeding off the fear that's already established by others. So in this case, they are really striving to scare people. And no better tactic than to copy somebody who's already been killing. And once again, it just builds on that fear. Psychotic killers, these guys are chronically ill. They have mental disorders, and these guys are usually caught because they're all over the place. They leave evidence behind because they're psychologically not there. The hard part about psychotic killers is they can be difficult at times because they can shoot somebody, then stab somebody, then rape somebody, then strangle somebody. So their MO can deviate big time. All right, sexual killers. I think we get the idea here. This is all about sexual desires, fantasies. Usually this starts off with rapes or peeping Tom to rapes. Okay, power and control. I mean, they want power of their victim. Missionary killers. They feel they're doing society a favor by getting rid of somebody. Visionary is all about delusions and